many things really influence how we communicate. One of them is our upbringing, how we were raised, whether we were raised in an atmosphere where we're free to express ourselves, or whether we were stifled and we didn't have the freedom to express ourselves without maybe reprisals or punishments and stuff like that. Our experiences also influence how we communicate, maybe the way we were dealt with in secondary school, maybe we went to boarding school, or we had people who were sitting on us and then we're not allowed to express ourselves. And then our temperaments, our personality types, these all influence and affect how we communicate. Now, you see, when it comes to communication, getting it right, we need to understand that it is not what you say, it is what they hear.
Yeah.
It's not just what you say, it is what the other person hears. And now that's not to lay the blame at your door and say you're responsible for what they hear, but it simply means that you need to be conscious, you need to be aware of the fact that just like many things influence your own way of communicating, many things also influence their own ability to articulate what you're trying to pass across. So it's not enough to just say, well, I said this is what I meant. You need to be sure also that what they heard is what you intended. So it's not just exactly, it's not just what you say, it is also what they hear. Now, quickly, let me talk about some typical wrong ways in which couples communicate, right? Some typical wrong ways that are just counterproductive, you know, criticism. Okay, so you have something to say and something isn't going well. Next thing, you're criticizing the other person. Defensiveness. So your spouse has something to say and then 1, 2, 3, you become defensive. Instead of listening in to really be sure that you get what they're trying to say, you become defensive. So there's criticism, there's defensiveness, there is contempt, where we actually just look down on the other person in a manner that makes them look like they're not even worth anything. Stonewalling, that's the one where we refuse to engage. You just zone out, you refuse to engage, you refuse to, just build a wall. The thing about building walls is that, you see, it's very frustrating. Walls, when you have a wall between you and your loved one, you can't see through the wall and they can't see through the wall. That's the thing. So there's no progress there. Stonewalling, then yelling is another one, screaming. Some people, you know, some people equate auditory strength with authority or with whatever. That you, until you scream and yell and shout, you won't be listened to. That's a dysfunctional way of communicating. Name calling, you know, calling them names, insulting them, being rude, threats, issuing threats. If you don't do this, if you won't do that, look, I'm going to do this, I will do that, and all of that. Rudeness, sarcasm. I own up that this one is one that I know that I've been very guilty of over the years. Being sarcastic. You know, passive aggression is another one where my children tell me, Mommy, you do this one a lot. So yeah, we are all growing and we are all learning and trying to improve, you know. Passive aggression, where you're not outrightly, you know, like all up in your face and fighting and stuff like that, but at the same time you're being a little aggressive, you know, and trying to push your way through. Being insistent is another one. Nagging is another one. Consistently saying the same thing repeatedly in an annoying manner. Nagging, you know. And then another one is expecting your spouse to read your mind. Expecting them to read. That's another thing I know I was guilty of in the earlier years of our marriage. By the way, our marriage will be 34 years old tomorrow. Tomorrow, the 4th of November, is our 34th wedding anniversary. Thank you. All right. So in the earlier years of our marriage, I know I was guilty of this one. I was guilty because I would just sit down there and I'll be stewing and wondering, can't he just know that? I mean, he should know. Can't you see that I walked past this way? I mean, he should know. Expecting your partner to read your mind, that's not an effective way, you know, of communicating at all. When in doubt, say it out loud. That's all. When in doubt, say it out loud. Just say what's on your mind. Another one is giving in and not really saying what you want, not saying what you think. So you're just giving at all costs. Just giving, and yet your own needs are not being met. You have questions, you have doubts, you have a whole lot of stuff going on, worrying you, and then you're not talking about it. You see, what that does is that it keeps the peace only for the short term. It's not sustainable. It keeps the peace only for the short term. It will gradually erode your own happiness. It will gradually erode your own happiness, and in turn gradually erode the relationship. Yes. That's why if there's anything on your mind, say what you need to say. Of course, the emphasis is on how you say it, and we'll talk about that later on. Another one is going on and on and on. That's nagging. That's an ineffective way of communicating. Just saying the same thing, talking non-stop, talking about everything. And it's not everything that comes to your mind that should really find its way out of your mouth. Not everything that will cause to you should come out of your mouth, really. And sometimes I know women are guilty of this many times. Okay. Okay. Then another one is not considering things from your partner's perspective. Okay. So you're seeing things just from your own perspective. Another one is not listening well. So you're focused on just listening and thinking about your response instead of listening to understand. So you're just focusing on listening, just waiting for your turn to respond. So you are there, your husband is talking and saying what's important to him, your wife is talking and saying what's important to her, and then you're just waiting. In fact, you probably have a pen in your hand and you're taking down notes, and I don't want to forget and everything, and then you're there aloof and just waiting, and then when they are done, you say, have you finished? Have you finished? Can I talk now? Have you finished? Can I say my own? Just waiting for your turn to talk, not really listening to understand. You see that? So these are all some of the dysfunctional ways by which we try to communicate. Yes, there's something on your heart. Yes, you're trying to pass a message across. Yes, you're trying to get your partner to engage with you. You want to connect with them. You want to be on the same page. If you're doing it the wrong way, it's going to be counterproductive, because the truth is this: you cannot antagonize and influence at the same time. It is impossible to antagonize and influence at the same time. So you cannot expect to be able to influence your partner to be on the same page with you, to understand what you're about, to try to understand what you're trying to communicate. You can't get that done effectively if you are being antagonistic. All right. Quickly, let me also talk about 4 reasons why your conversations end in quarrels. Because for some people, it has come to a point where they can hardly have a meaningful civil discussion without it degenerating to an outright brawl at the end of the day, a shouting match, and an all-out brawl in some cases and stuff like that. So, and it leads to greater frustration because somehow someone just feels unheard. Someone feels like, I haven't been heard, I haven't been understood. And each time we make attempts to talk about issues, then at the end of the day, it just worsens the matter, and then there's a distance, there's a wide disconnect between us. So what's the point? There's no point trying, so, and before it just leads to quarrels, and one thing, leads to another, and everything is just the riveting effect of that singular act of not being able to communicate effectively. Okay, so quickly, what are some of the reasons why your conversations end in quarrels? Number 1 is because you sound like your spouse's enemy. You sound like the enemy. So you're trying to communicate. Yes, so what you're saying is valid. You have something important to say. What you're saying is even the truth. Yeah. But you see, you sound like you are their enemy. You criticize them. Yes. Yes. You criticize them, you condemn them. I mean, nobody takes kindly to being put down. Nobody takes kindly to that. Nobody takes kindly to being attacked verbally. No, it doesn't sit well with anybody. Before you know it, they become defensive. That's human nature. So if you're sounding like you're attacking them, you're not going to get the best out of them. That communication is not going anywhere. So try to rehearse your words to yourself before you speak to your spouse about important issues. Of course, I'm not talking about, oh, what would you like for dinner, or oh, let me turn gari for you, or let me make rice. I'm not talking about stuff like that, you know, because those are things that normally we do without any offense, you know. But when it comes to serious issues, rehearse the words to yourself and then make sure.
Using trigger words to poke. When you use trigger
Sorry?
words to poke. Just said using trigger words to poke.
Oh, trigger words to poke.
Trigger you.
Exactly. Exactly. Look at that. Look at that. So ask yourself, how do I sound? Speak to yourself like, okay, this is how I'm going to say it, because it's a very important issue. I do that a lot because there's a way I don't want to be spoken to. So I also do not speak in a way that will invite that kind of response from, you know, my husband. Okay, so that's number one. Another way, another reason why your conversations end in quarrels is because you are overwhelmed by only your own perspective. You are overwhelmed by only your own perspective. You are not open to seeing the other person's perspective. It's only just about you, your own side, your own story. I mean, it's tiring for anybody to keep trying to get someone to see things their own way, just your own way all the time. It's all about you and your perspective, all about you and your own way. It's tiring. You know, you have to come to a point where you deliberately try to, you know, seek to truly understand your spouse's point of view. Try to truly understand where they're coming from. You know, be gracious. That's just it. Be gracious and don't always insist on your own perspective alone.
Can I chip in something there?
Yeah.
You know, when you said that always try to, you know, also understand the person's point of view. It most times, if you're humble, you will understand that you cannot always have all the opinion of the world. Most times, when people that always like to hear themselves, they have a problem with taking someone else's perspective, because it's sometimes you find out that it has to also do with upbringing is one, pride is something that they are probably dealing with, and until they humble themselves to understand that I cannot know it all, I have to understand that my own argument might not be the higher argument. Let me just understand your point, even if it might sound foolish, but there will be something there that I have to make, you know, us reason together in the right way and, you know, move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's just the truth, because no human being is an exclusive reservoir of knowledge. Nobody knows everything, and nobody has it all together all the time in every situation and every circumstance. So it's so important that we come off our high horses and stop thinking that we know everything. We do not know everything. That's a lot of arrogance and pride there. Okay. All right, thank you for that. And then the next thing is, why do our conversations many times end in quarrels? You know, is that you want to win every argument. You want to win every argument. You are on a mission to just prove that, look, you are right and your spouse is wrong. That's your mission. That's your motivation. And anybody can see right through that. Anybody can see right through that and know that, hey, you're not even thinking about, you're not prioritizing our relationship. You're not prioritizing our connection. This thing is only just about you being able to prove me wrong and prove yourself right. You know, that's why the other person revolts.
Right now, you know that, you know,
yes,
people have such characteristics. If they eventually yield to their spouse's opinion, and let's say their personal opinion has a fault or a gap, they are quick to say, you see, Kevin wanted to do that. Look at it now. Look at it now. And that one will cause more problems.
Yes.
You're not trying to say that what I was thinking about or what I was trying to do is not even, I was not thinking straight. You know, that kind of thing.
That's it. There's just, it sounds very funny, but it's not pretty when it's underway, when it's going on. It's not funny, it's not nice, and it just keeps chipping away at the level of confidence that your spouse has in you, and gradually you see resentment builds up over time. It births bitterness and all of that. You know, that's just not the right way to go. And then number three, is that number three or number
4 now?
Yeah, number four now is that you focus too much on your spouse's behavior. That's why you end up quarreling. You focus too much. You get carried away by their behavior. You focus too much on their behavior. You take their conduct at face value. Look, if you don't even remember any other thing so far, please don't forget this one. Don't take your spouse's conduct and their behavior at face value. No. No. Don't take their behavior, don't take their conduct at face value. You will be greatly mistaken to do that. There are a lot of things that fuel the behavior and the conduct of a person per time. And you need to be able to just slice through all of the facade and get to the weightier matters that lie underneath that are driving the person's conduct and behavior. Okay, so most times the truth is this: most times your spouse's behavior is really a cry out for help. I know it's difficult to believe, but that's how it is. They are hurting in some way too. He's hurting in some way too. She is hurting in some way too. Okay, so they're not handling it well. They're lashing out. They don't have it all together. They're not handling it the right way. Yes, that's true, but it still does not take away from the fact that this is an indication. Their conduct is indicative of deeper problems. Okay, so don't take them at face value. Don't take their conduct at face value. Most of the things that rub us the wrong way in our spouse's behavior, you know, they are symptoms. They are symptoms. They're symptomatic. They are indications of deeper problems. But somehow we never go past just what irritates us at the facial level. We don't go past that to get to the very bottom where the weightier matters lie. So try to look beyond the faults and see their need. Try to look beyond the faults and see their need, and then respond to that. Respond to their need, what you have perceived to be what they need at that time. So that way, they'll be more responsive to you. Communication will be sweeter because you would have broken down that wall of division between the two of you. And then one more very quickly, one more reason why your communication attempts end up in quarrels is that you dismiss or invalidate your spouse's feelings. You dismiss their feelings, you invalidate their feelings. Okay, so you question why they feel a certain way. Have you heard some people? Why should you be angry about that? Why should that be a problem? Excuse me, hello. It may not be a problem for you, but it is a problem for the other person. I've had instances where people sat across the table from me, and then one person has poured out their heart. They've taken their time to explain what's the matter. They've talked at length, you know. This is this is that, this is that. They've talked and talked and talked, and then fine. There are always two sides to every story. Now, how do you respond to this? What's your own side? And the other person goes, me? I don't have any problem. Me, I'm okay. Your spouse just talked about all the things that, you know, displease her about your conduct and everything. How do you respond? And they say, me, I don't have any problem. Maybe she has a problem. Me, I don't have any problem. Maybe he has a problem, but me, nothing. I'm okay. In other words, you don't have a right to feel the way you're feeling. What's the big deal about that? You see, when you dismiss or invalidate your spouse's feelings, it hits them it hits them very hard. It hits them in the wrong place, and it communicates to them that you do not value them. Okay, so the fact that you do not see something as a problem does not in any way invalidate it for the other person. If not, they'll feel, if you keep going on and on like that, they'll feel that you're being unfair to them, you're not treating them well, and you're not being kind to them. So acknowledge that it's okay for your spouse to feel a certain way that may be different from your own experience. It may be different from your experience, it may be different from what you even consider normal. Fine, but they're different from you, and it's okay that they feel that way. All right, so that's that. Be kind to your partner. That's the thing, okay? Yeah, so how do we now communicate effectively? How do we communicate effectively? You see, in communicating effectively, we need to understand something, that until there is comprehension, communication has not taken place. The foundation here is comprehension. Until there is comprehension, there can be no communication. Communication hasn't happened until comprehension has taken place. So whenever you have something to pass across to your spouse, be mindful that the goal should be comprehension on their part. You want them to understand what's happening. You want them to understand how you see things. In the same way, when they have something to pass across to you, your goal should be to also understand where they're coming from, to understand what's driving them. Very important. There's a need for understanding, comprehension. So you need to understand your point of view, yes, but also their point of view. You need to understand your own motives, yes, but you must also understand their own motives. You need to understand your own particular need at that time, but it's critical also that you understand their own need as well. Very important. So talk with that in mind. Engage them with that in mind, that what you're doing is that you're trying to understand. So whether you are the receiving end or whether you are on the other side, understanding, comprehension must be your goal. So understand where they're coming from, understand what they're trying to say, and then the feelings behind their words. This thing is here again. I'm saying it again. I mentioned it briefly earlier on, the feelings behind their words. So sometimes they say something and you take it at face value, but what they're communicating is, look, I feel neglected. They haven't used the words, I feel neglected, but they say something else. You always drop the ball when it's time for you to do your own part. When it's time for you to take the children out, that's when this happens. And then I go all day and I come back, and at the end of the day, you're still asking me why I didn't go to pick the children. You see, if you take that at face value and start saying, hey, but me too, I was working now. Me too. It's not that I was sitting down at home just watching TV. So are you trying to say now that I had nothing to do? So try to understand the feeling behind the words. The feeling that is being communicated is, hey, I feel neglected. The feeling that is being communicated is, I feel helpless. I feel frustrated, or I feel unheard. It could be any of several feelings. So you must make sure that you focus on comprehension. So how do you enhance comprehension? How do you enhance understanding? Very important. The first one is no assumption. Don't assume. Oh, aren't we good at that? Aren't we good at assuming? Aren't we good at surmising and deducing? No, the reason she's saying that is because when my mother came, my mother didn't do something, so she was unhappy. That's why she's doing it. I know why she's saying that. It's because he has collected money and he doesn't want to give money. I know. The reason is that just keep deducing and surmising, just keep going on and assuming. Assumption. Sometimes it's not even what you think. It's not even what you think. It's far from it. Okay, so in order to enhance comprehension, in order to enhance understanding between the two of you in your communication, make sure that you're not assuming anything. Next thing is the right perspective. Have the right perspective. Disagreements are normal. Conflict is optional. Disagreements are normal. because we are different people, we come from different backgrounds, we have different temperaments. It is normal, it is natural for us to disagree. We can't always see eye to eye on every single matter, okay? But then that we disagree does not mean that we have to have a conflict or that we have to fight. So disagreements are normal, but conflict is optional. That's the right perspective. Have the right perspective. So see, the right perspective also means see disagreement as feedback. I always tell couples that whenever it looks like there's tension, something is unresolved, it looks like, you know, you're not on the same page, just sit back and receive that as your relationship giving you feedback. Take it as feedback, that this disagreement is telling me something. This disagreement is telling us something. It's saying that, hey, there's a break in transmission. It's telling us something. It's telling us that there are issues over which we need to go back to the drawing table and map out a new strategy. See disagreements as feedback. See disagreements as feedback. Because see, the truth is that no matter how deep the crisis you think maybe it's hitting your marriage or hitting your relationship, crises in and of themselves, crises don't dissolve, they don't destroy marriages. Crises in and of themselves are not strong enough to destroy marriages. It is refusal to resolve crisis or immature ways, unhealthy ways, irresponsible ways of handling conflict. That is what destroys marriage. Okay, so disagreements are telling you something. Next thing, own your part first. Effective communication, own your own part first. Own your own. I learned that from my husband, you know, over the years. He always says that no matter what's happening, he always says, okay, so I always ask myself, in what ways did you contribute to this? Because the truth is this, whenever a marriage breaks down, it is never 100% one person's fault. Never. It is never 100% one person's fault. Either directly or indirectly, by acts of omission or by acts of commission. Knowingly or unknowingly, both parties contributed to it. So you should be able to sit yourself down and own your own part and be able to say, okay, so in this way and that way, I contributed to this, maybe unknowingly. Maybe it was a knowledge gap. Maybe it was just something I didn't even know about. Yes, own your own part and then begin to seek to address that so that from your own end, you are also making amends and making sure that going forward, communication will be effective between you and your spouse.